Greetings, everyone. I'm Capt.GhostAviator. With 17 years of experience training pilots all across the globe, I'm here to guide you through the real intricacies of the DGCA syllabus. Welcome to today's ground school session, where we're going to dive into a comprehensive explainer on Chapter 12, Visual Aids for Navigation. Now, in my ground school sessions, we operate under a strict zero-skip policy. Every single definition, every regulatory requirement we cover today, well, it's a potential question on your exam. But honestly, more importantly than that, it's a vital piece of knowledge for your entire career in the flight deck. You'll also notice my name watermarked across our boards today. That's just a quick security measure to ensure the integrity of our exclusive study material. All right, let's get into it.
Before we jump into the technical data, I really want you to internalize this thought. Aviation demands absolute precision. The visual aids we study today are the lifeline between a safe landing and a critical error. Think about it. When you're breaking out of the clouds at minimums, battling a heavy crosswind, that is definitely not the time to second-guess what a painted line or a colored light means. Your understanding has to be instantaneous. It has to be absolute. And that's exactly the level of discipline we're establishing right now.
So here is our top-down spatial journey for today's syllabus. We'll start with indicators and signaling devices, then move to runway and taxiway markings, followed by visual approach slope indicators. After that, we'll break down the master color code and finally wrap up with the DGCA exam essentials.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Indicators and Signaling Devices.
Okay, so when you're approaching an aerodrome, you absolutely need to know what the wind is doing and how the local traffic is flowing. It's fundamental. The regulations actually mandate that an aerodrome shall be equipped with at least one wind direction indicator, or WDI. And it makes sense, right? It has to be clearly visible from an aircraft in flight and placed completely free from any air disturbances caused by nearby buildings or trees. Now, here is a critical DGCA exam tip you need to jot down right now. It's about the landing direction indicator, or LDI. If an aerodrome provides one, the LDI must be conspicuously located, and, by official recommendation, it should be in the exact form of a capital T. Remember that shape for your exam. T for touchdown direction.
Moving right along to the signal area. Now, pay close attention to this critical safety limitation. The signal area must be a perfectly even horizontal surface, and it has to be at least 9 meters square. It can't just casually blend into the surrounding grass either. It strictly must be surrounded by a white border not less than 0.3 meters wide, and the color of the area itself has to sharply contrast with the signal panels used inside it. Why so specific? Well, it ensures that even if you're 300 meters up, looking down at a shallow 10-degree angle, you can still clearly and quickly interpret those ground signals.
Bringing it down to the ground now, let's look at Section 2, Runway and Taxiway Markings.
Threshold markings. These are those prominent longitudinal stripes you see right at the very beginning of the runway. Their primary job? To tell you exactly how wide the runway is before you touch down. The math here is simple but absolutely essential to memorize. The number of stripes correlates directly to the runway width. So an 18-meter wide runway gets 4 stripes. A 30-meter runway gets 8 stripes. A standard 45-meter wide runway will show you 12 stripes, and a massive 60-meter wide runway will feature a full 16 stripes. In a split second during your landing flare, this specific visual pattern gives you deep, subconscious situational awareness of your spatial limits.
But hey, what happens when the very beginning of the runway isn't fit for a landing? That brings us to displaced thresholds. The absolute key here is distinguishing between a temporary and a permanent displacement. If a threshold is permanently displaced, you'll see white arrows painted on the center line pointing towards a thick transverse stripe. That transverse stripe is your new, strict, do not land short of this line marker, and it has to be at least 1.80 meters wide. Now, if it's only temporarily displaced, all the old markings prior to it are obscured, except the center line, which gets converted into those arrows. Remember, never ever land short of a displaced threshold. That area might be structurally fine for taxiing slowly, but it doesn't guarantee the structural support needed for the heavy dynamic impact of a landing aircraft.
Once you cross the threshold, your eyes need a firm target, and that is your aiming point marking. These are the 2 highly conspicuous, thick rectangular stripes you'll spot further down the runway. Now, here's how we apply this concept in the air. The aiming point marking is carefully designed to coincide exactly with the origin of your visual approach slope, meaning if you keep that aiming point totally stationary in your windshield, you are locked dead on to the perfect glide path. Surrounding this aiming point are your touchdown zone markings. Notice how they decrease in pairs the further down the runway you look? That tells you exactly how much precious landing distance you're currently eating up.
Let's simplify the standard operating procedures when it comes to paint colors. Runway markings shall be white, always.
Taxiway markings, runway turn pad markings, and aircraft stand markings, those shall be yellow. However, there is a very unique regulatory procedure for operations specifically in India, and trust me, the DGCA loves to test this one. Apron safety lines, which are meant to provide safe separation from ground vehicles and servicing equipment, must be painted red in India. So, white for landing speed, yellow for taxiing, and red for safety lines on the apron. Make sure you keep that filed away in your memory.
Shifting our focus to the final approach, let's cover Section 3, Visual Approach Slope Indicators.
You might be wondering, does every single runway out there need these complex lighting systems? Well, no. But the regulations strictly mandate them under very specific conditions. A VASIS, or Visual Approach Slope Indicator system, must be provided if the runway is used by turbojets purely because they require precise, stabilized approach guidance. It's also absolutely required if a pilot might struggle to judge the approach visually, say for instance when you're flying over featureless terrain or deceptive sloping ground. Finally, if there are serious hazard objects in the approach area or at either end of the runway that risk undershoots or overruns, a VASIS isn't just a nice-to-have feature. It is a mandatory regulatory lifeline.
Most common system you're actually going to use is the PAPI, the Precision Approach Path Indicator. Let's walk through exactly what the pilot sees on descent. A standard PAPI has 4 distinct light units, typically sitting on the left side of the runway. Let's mimic an aircraft descending through the glide path. If you are way too high, you're going to see 4 bright white lights. White, 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 white. As you descend and properly capture the slope, you want to see exactly 2 red and 2 white lights. That right there means you are perfectly on the 3-degree glide path. But if you dip dangerously below the glide path, the lights transition completely. 4 red lights, red, 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 red. 2 red, 2 white, that is always your golden target.
Next up is Section 4, the Master Color Code. Memorizing these is absolutely critical for your exam.
Let's aggregate all this lighting data so it's easy to digest. Taxiway edge lights are fixed blue. That distinct blue outline maps out your safe taxi route in the pitch dark. Now the runway threshold lights, which mark the safe, usable beginning of the landing surface, are fixed green. And remember, they are unidirectional, meaning you only see that green from the approach side. Conversely, at the far end of the runway end lights are fixed red. It's intuitive, right? Green means you're safe to go ahead and land. Red means the runway is officially over, you need to stop.
When it comes to aerodrome signs, the master rule is wonderfully simple. The only signs on the movement area that use the color red are mandatory instruction signs. Think of runway holding position signs. They always feature a white inscription on a solid red background. You literally do not pass them without explicit ATC clearance. On the other hand, a location sign, which just tells you where you currently are, like which taxiway you're currently rolling on, features a yellow inscription on a black background, framed with a yellow border. So red means mandatory action, black means location. Easy.
Finally, let's enter the exam crucible with Section 5, DGCA Exam Essentials.
Let's test your immediate recall right now with an official exam question pulled straight from the source material. When on or close to the approach slope, the wing bar of a PAPI shows what? Think back to our descent sequence from a few minutes ago. If you answered 2 red lights and 2 white lights, you are absolutely correct. Remember, 1 red and 3 whites means you're slightly high. 3 reds and 1 white means you're slightly low. 2 and 2 means you are perfectly on slope.
All right, here are your final rapid-fire flashpoints to ensure absolutely zero knowledge gaps before test day. First, in the case of parallel runways, each runway designation number is supplemented by a specific letter, read from left to right. For 2 parallel runways, it's L for left and R for right. If there are 3, it's L, C for center, and R. Second, you must know your declared distances perfectly. TODA, or takeoff distance available, is your takeoff run available plus the length of the clearway. And ASDA, accelerate stop distance available, that's your takeoff run available plus the length of the stopway.
We've systematically broken down the regulatory limits, the paint colors, the light sequences, and the essential exam codes. So my final question to you is this. Are you prepared to trust your discipline to these visual aids when you are breaking out of harsh weather at 200 feet above ground level? Aviation leaves zero room for guesswork. Review this material, master these visual languages, and carry this knowledge directly into the flight deck. Thank you so much for joining me in this Ground School Explainer. Study hard, fly safe, and I will see you in the next session.